There is a place for you. Archives is an open field that is ever evolving. They ask the question, you see their eyes open up and they say, that's true, that's true. And that's what I love about teaching students.
Hello and welcome to Archives Alive. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. Thanks for joining us. In this episode, we turn our attention to the work of preserving memory, identity, and history across the Caribbean. Our second guest, Janelle Duke, is a distinguished and well-trained archivist whose work span Trinidad, Barbados, and Jamaica, bringing a regional perspective to the stewardship of our collective past. In conversations with Rashid Best, Janelle reflects on her professional journey into the world of archives, offering insights into the academic research that has shaped her training and her practice. She explores the critical role of national archives in shaping Caribbean identity and safeguarding the memory of our people, while also examining the evolving challenges and opportunities presented by the digital era. As a lecturer and practitioner, she speaks candidly of the responsibility of training the next generation of archivists and the need to reimagine archival work in a region rich with history, but often constrained by resources. This is more than a conversation. It's a thoughtful exploration of who we are, how we remember, and how we preserve the Caribbean story for generations to come. Over to you, Rashid.
Thank you, Sherwood, and thank you for joining us. You've built a career in archives across the Caribbean. What sparked your interest in this field?
I was a student in the 2010s at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. I was doing my master's in history. So the head of department at the time, she used to see me at the history office a lot. And she said, Janelle, I got a call from the government archivist. She needs people. I need you to go to work. I said, to go to work for what? She said, it's only going to be 2 weeks. They need relief staff. Some of their staff have gone off on leave. They went off on maternity, vacation leave. So they have staffing issues. And we need to get someone, right? It's only 2 weeks. Just go. And those 2 weeks ended up being 12 years. 12 years of my life that I have enjoyed thoroughly.
So you have experience in archival practice, library management, and historical research. How do you bring together these experiences in your day-to-day responsibilities?
Right, so it started again when I got into archives. I went to the archives. I knew nothing about archives. I just went to do research there from time to time. So one of the staff at the search room, the head of the search room, she said that she was retiring and she needed someone to learn the library management aspect of the archives, because libraries are very important. Books are very important in the archives, even though we look at archival records, paper records, and other types of records across the spectrum, like audiovisual records. She said, you need to acquire these types of books because researchers, when they come in, some of them, they don't often know what they need. So what you do, you direct them to a book first. I said, direct them to a book? She said, yes. So we acquire books specifically for the types of records we have at the archives here. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And that is what I learned. When she left, I took over from that. But apart from that, I came as a historical researcher to put administrative histories to the records, which means I'm writing histories of government ministries, of all the collections that there were at the archives at the time. So the research, you have to pull books as well, those secondary sources, to get information. So I learned that you're taking the archival record, you're analyzing, understanding what is there in the record. And if you don't understand and you need further information, you go to a secondary source. Because oftentimes, these books would have been written by people who used the archival record before you. So you take this information, put it together, and then internalize, put it out for access for your researchers. So basically what I was doing is taking the historical research, combining it with library management, understanding the archival collections, getting library material that would be essential to the archival records and essential to the understanding of the records, and then using a little history at the end of the day to bring that entire narrative together.
Okay, and tell us why this work matters so much.
Because when you look at records, any type of record, it could be a newspaper, it could be Hansard's, it could even be a black and white photograph. These records speak about us. These records speak to us in the Caribbean region, speak to our culture, our identity. It speaks to where we were, how we came. We came via enslavement, we came via indenture, we even migrated and cross-migrated across the Caribbean region. So it documents that movement, it documents that arrival, it documents how we coalesced as a society, it documents the birth of society, and then it documents how we moved from being essentially colonial to how we started to decolonize, how we became independent, that race toward independence. And then it continues now as we continue to acquire. In this time, it documents how we are as a people and how we are continuing to progress over time. So this is why these records are so important.
Your academic research project looks at the records left behind in the sugar industry. Tell us what drew you to this topic.
Again, it's when I started at the archives. Everybody in Trinidad and Tobago, and I could probably guess that across the region, we know about sugar. We know something about the sugar industry in our islands. And for me, and for people in Trinidad and Tobago, within a certain age range, let's say from mid-30s all the way to your 90s, people would have seen sugar in action at that time when the company was operational. When I started at the archives, that would have been maybe 6 months into my stay. And the government archivist said that she had a project and she wanted me to go along with her. We were going to Brechin Castle, which was one of the last operational factories in the sugar industry. Caroni was already closed at that time. So we were going to look at where they were in the project. So I'm seeing for the first time in the vehicle records piled to the ceiling. And I'm wondering, but why? Why are these records piled to the ceiling? What are they doing? Only to discover that they were taking these records, compiling, then cleaning, and putting them back into records boxes. Later on, 2 archivists from the Caribbean Archives Association, which is CARBICA, the Caribbean Regional Branch of the International Council on Archives, they came to assess the records to see what is the value and what types of records exist in this collection. And that is how I first started to look at the Caroni records. Later on, when I started my MPhil PhD journey, in my master's program and even throughout my bachelor's program would have stayed looking at the history of the Anglican Church in Trinidad and Tobago. And the government archivist, she said, listen, you've overdone that. Why don't you do Caroni? Caroni is open, it's accessible to you because you work here, and what you could do is start to process these records. because we need to know what is in them and we have to try to make them accessible to the public. So it's going to be a win-win situation. But I didn't understand the gravity of what this project would entail. So she said, this is going to look at the politics of sugar. I said, the politics of sugar? Okay, all right. So I started to look, but I didn't quite grasp it until I went into the records. And again, you see that all of these records speak to who we are as a people, how we started. Again, sugar made the islands coalesce, sugar made Trinidad coalesce, because we have so many ethnicities in Trinidad and Tobago. You have African, Indian, Portuguese, Chinese. Right? We're so mixed up, and it is because of the sugar industry. This project is now the sugar industry in the 20th century. The sugar industry in the 18th and 19th centuries have been overdone. But in the 20th century, you're now seeing the progression of how big companies such as Tate and Lyle would have come into small islands like Trinidad and Tobago, take over their sugar industry, take records, do things. They had the power to shape the islands, shape the industry, which they did. But then they took those records and left. And what was left behind was garbage, the things that they didn't want, the things that they discarded. And when they discarded these things, this is what we have, and we still didn't know what we have. Those pieces that they left built the sugar industry in the 20th century, currently 1975 limited, and into the 21st century. So when I started looking, I said, well, I now understand the politics of sugar, because it not only stressed how society was created, but you saw how the politics in Trinidad and Tobago was born. You saw how economy was born, because after sugar started dying, the oil industry started booming. And the oil industry, that money was taken to inject into the sugar industry. And you're seeing in these records that were left behind all the issues that would have come out, all the socio-economic issues. You're seeing the people that you see in politics, people that you see today, people who have left us, people who have shaped Trinidad and Tobago. So these records are basically about the islands, basically about how we started and how we continue. And the mistakes that we have made along the way when we nationalized industries like these, colonial industries, and how maybe in the future we could change that. We could then take nationalized industries and make it our own, instead of just taking over and continuing the way that it was.
Tell us what you have discovered about how Caribbean history is preserved or maybe forgotten.
Remembering and forgetting is part of archives. It's part of the human disposition. Remembering and forgetting. We forget all the time. We forget about things. We forget about issues. We forget about people. We choose what we want to remember. We choose what we want to forget. But in terms of archives and its preservation, it's a two-pronged issue. Some of these issues lie deep within government, because most of our archives in the region were born out of government, or they were government archives before they became national archives. So in terms of preservation, where we need infrastructure, it would go back to government to get policy for that to happen. Funding, we don't have the qualified staff. That has always been an issue, to get qualified staff. And even those people who went on to go to places such as Canada, Europe, Australia to do their archives degrees, when they come back, the issues that are endemic to the Caribbean region were things that they didn't learn. They learned about Europe and their issues. They learned about Canada, the US and their issues. But the issues we have, climate change, it affects records differently in the region as opposed to everywhere else. because on most days it's hot and it's even more hot. And then it's going to be humid all of a sudden and rain falls, flooding. And rain would fall in 10 minutes. You get a 10-minute rainfall that is so strong, you think it has rained for days in just 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, the temperature rises. Water has risen. It touches records. We have to now try to fix those records. We have to put it out to dry. You have to have the infrastructure for that. You have to have the know-how. We have to have the policy. And people don't know about that. In terms of digitization, the technologies. We may have the technology, we have the know-how, but do we have the money? Again, you have to go back to government to implement this infrastructure. We have to advocate. We don't have the people to advocate. And even if we do, it's falling on deaf ears. You have to say the same things over and over to the same people. And when they have been convinced, they leave. And then you get a new set of people that you have to start the process again. So it's always the same issues over and over. But we have to continue to push forward. Because without us, without archives, without archivists, records, the information that is held within the records will be lost. And we will lose our identity one step at a time, little by little.
You've worked in Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and Jamaica, and as part of the Caribbean Regional Branch of the International Council of Archives. Are there shared challenges across the region when it comes to archives?
Most definitely. And that came to the fore for me when we had a conference in 2024 at Curacao. So this conference was a collaboration together with UNESCO, the Caribbean Regional Branch of the International Council on Archives, CARBICA, and CER, which is the Cultural Emergency Response. Because what we were trying to establish are hubs in the region, an emergency ambulance for when we have issues of climate change, for example, hurricanes, earthquakes, all sorts of disasters that could affect records. We need to know the types of persons that could assist. So we had this conference. We brought together archivists, librarians, museum curators, and even persons working with intangible heritage. So example, statues and different places. So it's not only a statue, but a place, right? A square, a park that is endemic to us. And you get the same response, the same issue. We don't have enough policy. We don't have enough advocacy. We don't know who we could go to if we have a problem. We don't have the funding. We don't have the personnel. And even if we have people who are interested in going to learn, we don't have the money for that either because it's so expensive. And we don't have the know-how in the region. But thankfully, we're getting it now at the Department of Library and Information Studies as they move forward with museum curation and digitization, technologies, libraries, archive studies.
Tell us the importance of regional archives in shaping national Caribbean identity and memory.
These records tell a story about people, but we only see it because maybe I live in Trinidad or other people live in the Bahamas. We just see it as it's endemic to us. But really and truly, all of these records, whether we are in the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, English-speaking Caribbean, Dutch or French, these stories are similar. We went through a similar process. We went through a similar process of creating identity. Even though those identities may seem different, when people speak, when we talk about stories and when I lecture and we talk about stories, we talk about instances of things that may have happened in Jamaica or things that may have happened in Trinidad or Barbados, it's very similar. Ideas such as Anansi. The story may be different, but the people involved are the same. So it means that it is one story, as one of my favorite Calypsonians would say, and that's the Black Stallion, when he spoke about the Caribbean man. When you think about it, we are one race, and we came from the same place. We made that trip on the same ship. So we have identical stories. No matter if you're from Suriname, which there was one time where I met a guy and he said, wait, it had an Indian indenture in Trinidad, but the story is the same as what happened with us. And from there you see that the stories are similar. We are similar. We just live in different places and we don't see it. But when you look at the records tell you that story. And that's why I think it's so important.
In today's digital world, are archives becoming more accessible or more at risk?
Both. Definitely both. Digitization and the digital world poses so many opportunities for access. People can stay in their houses in Australia and ask for records in Barbados, and they could get it. They could write a book. You could just go on Google, and AI would come up with the answer because the records have been digitized, or someone made a video somewhere, maybe on TikTok, on Instagram, and spoke about records and information. People could go on Facebook, because I know some of the archives in the region, they are accessible via Facebook, and they create narratives and stories. So you could pull information. But on the other hand, again, it goes back to policy. We don't have enough funding to buy the materials, to buy the machinery. And even when we do get the money, over time, because technology, and I think that happened within COVID, that COVID period, technology moved from being 3 to 5 years or even 6 to 10 years to almost every year. So by the time you get equipment, it's already out of date or getting to the point of being out of date. Then you have to convince IT staff or people in IT that we need things to go this way, not in the IT way. We need it to go this way so that we could preserve records. And going back to infrastructure again, even when we have storage, we don't have enough. And we have to advocate again for more storage. So on that end, even though it's more accessible, we still have so many issues that we have to deal with, so many issues that we have to try to understand and bring together. And even there's another dynamic that some of the information out there may not be true. And those records that we can't digitize in time or as fast, that are still in paper, that is still in their original form. It could be a pneumatic tape, it could be VHS, it's still in that original format. AI creates a story for you. So you go and you look up online and you get an answer and you think, well, okay, I got the right thing. So now archivists are challenged with, when we find this type of information, how are we going to change the narrative? You have to go up on whatever AI and say, no, this is the wrong information. This is the right information. So it means that we have to now be challenged to do more research and put that information out there. And recently I learned that you could go on Wikipedia and put your archives at the bottom so that people could see, oh, this is where the information came from. And maybe we could then pull from that. And yet there's another dynamic. When you have companies, such as genealogy companies, coming into your country to do the digitization for you, or you get a grant to do digitization, it sounds nice on paper, but in the fine print, they have to make their money back somehow, even though they're doing it for free. So it means that your information, your records, that could then pull researchers to your archives is locked behind a paywall for a decade, for more than 20 years, until they could make their money back. And even after that time, you're not liable to get the originals of these digitized records, and you're back at square one again. So yes, it's accessible, but at the same time, it's at risk. You, the archives, and the archivists in the region, you're at risk because you don't have the power or the custody over these records now. You have another company making money off of you, and you have to try now to find ways to say, well, these are my records. We could still put something on the side and say, okay, we could go on this website and get this information because it came from us. But who's believing that when I just want to go up online and get my information and move on with my life?
You're also a lecturer on the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies. What do you enjoy most about teaching the next generation of archivists?
I like shaping minds. I like opening their minds so that they could see that records are not static. They're not just on the table and you flip through. It's about a story. It's a narrative. And I always tell them about the master narrative. You're getting away from that master narrative that was told way back when by the Europeans, by colonists. And you're going into the record and you're going to find that you have cultural imagery. Your cultural identity is coming out there. Your national identity is there. Oral histories can then be put together with these paper records. So I like to shape minds and open them up to that idea that these paper records or any type of record in the Caribbean region is so dynamic, it's so expressive. At some points you have carnival costumes and you wouldn't even think that's a record, but it is, right? And we are one of the few places, and I'm talking about the Caribbean region as a whole when I say one of the few places that have this type of expression, right? Oral expressions that are records. There are other places, yes, Africa, Brazil, etc. But specifically to the region, or oppression, we created expression out of that. John Canoe, Jose, again, carnival in all its forms, whether it's crop over, whether it's Vincy Mass, whether it's Trinidad Carnival. All of these records tell a story. And they need to understand that if we don't do something to pull it back and to document, and it doesn't mean writing, we don't have to write. Because I asked them the question, when you learn to cook, how did you learn? Did you learn with a measuring cup? Did you read in a recipe book? No. You watch your grandmother, you watch your mother, and then you did it. You measure rice in your hand. You don't measure it with a cup. You make bread, and you know a pinch of salt. What is a pinch? Right? What is a pinch? But you know it's a pinch of salt. Otherwise, it's not going to taste the way it's supposed to taste. And you know how long it's supposed to be in for. And how did you learn that? So I like to see when they ask the question, you see their eyes open up and they say, that's true, you know. That's true. And that's what I love about teaching students.
I'm sure you've had many interesting and fascinating experiences doing archival work. Could you share with us one such story?
Wow. Over the years, there have been so many stories, but I think the one thing that stuck with me was the one day that I was looking through the Caribbean Rule of Honor, just for Trinidad, and this is specifically to World War I, when people came back from the war. I said to myself, wow, there are so many people in this list. I wonder if there are people related to me. Because some of my family have Bajan names. They're Braffett. said to myself, let me look, or maybe I'll see a Duke or something. But then I saw Braffett and I said, I wonder if this person is related to me. I asked my mother when I went home. She said, you know, that person, Theophilus Braffett, is related to your grandmother, right? That was your grandmother's uncle. You know that, right? And there and then, it came to the fore. Record speaking, okay, fine. So I left that. Was looking through other records for somebody else, because that was part of my daily research. Then I saw an ad in the newspaper, Captain Arthur A. Cipriani, who in Trinidad and Tobago, he was a hero, the hero of the barefooted man, they had called him. And if you ever go to Port of Spain, you'll see him in the center of town. There is a statue dedicated to him. But Captain Cipriani was looking for people in Princestown, which is a town in the south of the island, the most southern part of the island. I said, well, look at that. He did work with Captain Cipriani. So I worked it out in my mind that Captain Cipriani would have gone to Princestown and he would have enlisted at that time. So in the roll of honor, you're seeing him as one of the private first class under Cipriani. Then years later, someone wrote to me. I can't remember her first name, but she was a Cipriani, and she said, my great-grandfather was Captain Cipriani, and I'm looking for any type of record on him. So I told her that, you know, we didn't have much records on him, but there is this one record. And I told her, suffice it to say, it might sound funny, but one of my ancestors, he worked under your ancestor. He was part of his platoon, and they served between 1916, because they left in 1915, and arrived in Egypt in 1916, and they worked toward the end of the war in 1918, and then came back to Trinidad. So in some way we are related, because one ancestor worked with the next, and she was working at the parliament. She came to the archives, and we spoke for a long time. And it's so funny how records could bring two unseemingly different people from different dynamics and different places, different worlds together, right? And that was just off of me looking for a person. And that stuck with me.
What would you say to young people who are considering work in this field or in the history field?
There is a place for you. Archives is an open field that is ever evolving. So even if you don't know what you want to do as yet, even if you don't have an idea, or even if you're doing history, you're into culture, you're into dance, even if you're into law or technology, there is a place for you. Even if you like to build 1,000-piece puzzles, maybe you could go into conservation, paper conservation, and restore records. If you're into law, you could help us with policy at the highest levels, at the level of copyright, at legislation, right? Even if you love history and you love looking at records, or even if you don't yet, and you start to look at records, especially newspapers, you're going to fall in love with research, because more likely than not, you're going to learn something new every day.
Looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of archives in the Caribbean?
I think we're at a crossroads of opportunity with archives, and especially in the region. And I tell my students that all the time. Everyone in this class, take a look at them, listen to them, speak with them. These are your colleagues for life, and you never know when you're going to need them, because we need that kind of collaborative effort in the region to bring our records together, and that is part of it. We are at the cusp of technology. Yes, it may not be perfect, but it will give us that accessibility to be seen in the wider world, for our stories to be seen, our stories to be understood. because we are just as important as the rest of the world. We are that cog in the machine, no matter how you look at it. Something starts here, it ends here. We're part of that machine that created society and world society, because we are so dynamic in the way we dress, in the food we prepare, the way we speak. Because no matter which island you go to, we have a different accent. We have different words. So for the future of archives, I'm thinking that we could continue with what Kabika would have started early on, which was to bring records together into one system so that people could access. And for us as Caribbean people to understand ourselves, to understand that we're not as different as we think we are. We're almost the same. The only issue with us is that we live in different places.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sherwood, back to you.
And so, as we come to the end of this episode of Archives Alive, we reflect on a truly inspiring conversation. In her exchange with Rashid Best, Janelle did not simply share her journey, she has brightened a path. With clarity, conviction, and passion, she reminded us of the profound importance of archives in shaping Caribbean identity, preserving memory, and guiding our future. Janelle stands as a fine example of vision and purpose in the field of Caribbean archiving. Her depth of knowledge, regional experience, and commitment to excellence speak not only of what has been achieved, but what is indeed possible. Her work underscores an important truth. The future of Caribbean archives will depend on individuals who are trained, inspired, and equipped with the very skills and insights she generously embodies. For those considering a path in this field, her story is both a guide and a call to action. The Caribbean needs archivists, and it needs them to be bold, innovative, and grounded in purpose. Janelle Duke has shown us what that can look like. Until next week at the same time, I'm Sherwood McCaskey. This has been Archives Alive. Thanks for your time.